No. Okay, just to preface, Adeline and Carter are on F, and Connor and I are on neg. And Adeline, you're the first speaker, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start that speech whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. Is my opponent ready? Is my partner ready? Then I will begin my speech starting now. Me and my partner stand in the firm affirmation of the resolution resolved on balanced societies benefit from religious beliefs and practices. We have definitions on hand if my opponents are to ask for them. Contention 1, crutch. Many religious practices can help with mental health and act almost as a crutch. If one was to partake in a religious practice that includes solidarity and self-work, they may be able to feel a sense of self-control and wholeness with one's body and mind. For example, Buddhism, according to the BBC, spiritual tradition that focuses on personal spiritual development and the attainment and deep insight to the true self of nature and life. In addition to it, it brings wholeness with one's mind and body, and they have a better social connection with people around them. This can include speaking to others around them who also go through the same process. A large example could be Alcoholics Anonymous, where communication is heavily encouraged with others that have a same problem. The idea of Alcoholics Anonymous to encourage communication to speak about one's problems. Contention 2, education. I quote, "We find that religious beliefs are compatible with increased education and knowledge. Religious literacy is a key to a well-rounded education. This will enhance the student's education by teaching them more about knowledge in different religions around the world. If a student are going to function as global citizens and be members of society, they will need to understand the religion's impact on history, politics, society, and culture. Students should know the basic religion facts and should be able to recognize the diversity that exists in each belief system that surrounds them. Students will also encounter different types of people throughout their lives, and they're going to need to know how to deal and accept with it. Religiously motivated hate and crimes are on the rise. Therefore, to decrease this, we should be teaching students about religion during school hours. Research shows that the percentage of hate crimes led by religious bias was about 3 times higher in 2012 than in 2004. Many of the violent hate crime leaders are school age. If educators encourage students to understand and respect people of different beliefs, it will immensely help lower the percentage of these hate crimes. It may be stated on the side of the negation with religion, there comes a lot of hate crimes, but as stated in the evidence, an increase of education in religion will help decrease these crimes. Not only this, but as cited in his recent book, Our Kids, the American Dream in Crisis, sociologist Robert Putin actually cites many such studies, and the evidence is overwhelming. His conclusions that religion is not only a good impact, but can even have the effect upon a child's education. Compared to their unchurched peers, youth who are involved in a religious organization take tougher courses, get higher grades and test scores, and are less likely to drop out of high school. Moreover, church-going youth behavior have better relationships with their parents. They are more involved in sports and extracurricular activities. They're less likely to abuse alcohol and drugs that inhibit learning. That is to say, the more moral formation influenced by religion provides the framework for students to flourish. Even more surprising is that the finding of religion is not the domain of unenlightened lower classes of society as often is insinuated. In fact, students from affluent families are now much more likely to be involved in religion than those in poor families. Religion is a major part of the mix that allows many of them to attain later success in life. That if were not enough, students enlightened by religion tend to seek higher education. Putin cites that studies that show that a child whose parents regularly attend church is 40 to 50% more likely to go to a college education than a smaller child of parents who do not attend church. We see here that there's an overwhelming amount of studies that show the individual who practices religion and is involved in the religious community is more likely to try for a higher education, and by bettering the individuals as a whole, then we can together contribute to the bettering of our society. Subpoint A, morals for society. I quote, "Religion is responsible for creating cohesiveness within a society. A civilization cannot thrive without the conformity or a collection set of ideology beliefs that can be agreed upon. Regardless of what social rule and religion imposes as right or wrong, it's a primary source of society's collective belief system that penetrates into the individual's moral code. Therefore, religion, the collective mindset, regulates societal norms and what is deemed morally justified. No one can deny the impact religion has had within a civilization throughout history." The following article was submitted by the Public Theology Forum an economic group of Christian ministers and theologians. For our purpose here, religion is understood to be beliefs and practices in which a group of people interpret and respond to what regards as sacred and unusually supernatural, as well as inscrutable and or mysterious at the present time. Religious beliefs and practices tend to differ from culture to culture. People's religious core tends to be the major source of their sense of identity, the moral constructive as they see them, something that deserves to be guarded jealously, sometimes to the extent of becoming exclusive in relations to groups to be outgroups. Groups' prejudice are usually reinforced in religious beliefs, and discrimination against outgroups is justified on theological grounds. The Jewish attitude to Arabs is justified on the grounds of what is Yahoo requires. So too is much of the exclusivism and discrimination associated with the practice of Christianity in different parts of the world. Religion beliefs also tend to be conservative or support the tendency to be concerned with preserving social conventions and relation patterns just because they are old and deemed to have a divine origin. Many religious leaders resist change, outgoing the fear of angering God by thereby incurring God's wrath. Many who are victims of unjust practices endure their sufferings and deprivations passively.
Yeah.
Is it time for cross-ups?
For you, Adeline?
What?
Oh, was that time? Is that why you ended your speech? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So we can continue with the negative constructive then.
Oh, so I go. All right. Are my opponents ready? Is my audience or partner ready? And then I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. I stand in strong negation of the resolution resolved. On balance, societies benefit from religious beliefs and practices. When we when we look at the overall effect of religion on society, it becomes clear that it has been used to marginalize minorities and justify atrocities. While not all religious people are bad, religious beliefs and practices have severely hindered social progress. The only stance is that of the negation. Before continuing, I want to make it clear that when discussing this topic, it's not just individuals that we are discussing. When talking about society, you must examine at its history. When looking at an individual's societal impact, while relevant, an individual has little effect. It is the organizations, the big churches and other such things that have the greatest amount of impact, and as we can see, as repeated throughout history, that is a negative one. Contention 1, genocide in the name of God. 54.5% of the world subscribes to Abrahamic religions, and it is those religions, Christianity, Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, that have the greatest impact. And of that 54.5%, 31.5% are Christian. Pew Research Center, the Global Religious Landscape. It is because of this that the most of the information provided will be concerning the Catholic Church. With Christianity being the most widespread and followed religion, it is easy to see the great influence it has on people and in turn politics. However, sometimes the action not taken has the greatest impact. During World War II, the Catholic Church failed to speak out against the atrocities committed against Jewish individuals, even when provided with first-hand accounts of this. Quote, although there were individual resistors, many mainstream Protestant and Catholic Church leaders made numerous compromises with Nazi authorities and supported many of the Nazi measures throughout the period. End quote. By not only failing to dissent the Nazis, but outwardly supporting them, Christianity teaches their followers that these atrocities are acceptable in the eyes of God. Religion has played a major role in a lot of the world's genocides and genocidal acts. According to Oxford Research Encyclopedias, quote, among the genocidal events inspired by political religions based on sacred texts are the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, the sack of Magdeburg, the British Civil War in Ireland, and the British Civil War in Bosnia. With these few examples, you get a total of 192,300 lives lost in the name of religion. That's the entirety of Los Angeles County, and this is just 4 examples out of the long track record between society and religion. Subpoint A, slavery. Not only is Christianity one of the most followed religions, it is Christianity/Catholicism that has been used to justify the wants and needs of the oppressor. Ephesians 6:5-8, Paul, quote, slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart as to Christ, end quote. And this isn't the only Bible quote justifying slavery. It was religion, or more specifically Christianity, that gave Europeans the justification to colonize and exploit Africa. And with that colonization, we see the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. Due to this direct correlation, it is apparent that religion is at least partly responsible for the 60 million who died during the transatlantic slave trade. With the colonization of Africa and the transatlantic slave trade came the colonization of the Americas, and with that came the native genocide. During that time, 90% of the native population died from foreign diseases and at the hands of the colonizers. Between the years of 1492 and 1900, it was estimated that roughly 12 million indigenous people died as a direct result of colonization. And it wasn't just their lives that they took. They also took their land, culture, an entire way of life, forced to leave behind their spirituality and beliefs to follow Christianity. However, this wasn't just in the early colonial times that this was seen. In 2021, at least 1,000 unmarked graves were found in Canada's residential schools, and there are still being more discovered today. Subpoint B, forced assimilation of Native Americans. In the 19th and 20th century, 1,500,000 Native children were separated from their families and put into 150 Canadian residential schools. According to David Love from the Washington Post, quote, thousands of children died, 4,100 according to Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission on the residential schools, although the number may have actually been as high as 15,000. We can only imagine the trauma these children experienced, including those who were forced to bury their classmates and build their coffins. In these residential schools, the kids will be forced to cut their hair, a source of spirituality for natives, stop speaking their native language, and convert to Christianity, as well as live in inhumane conditions. These children would suffer at the hands of those who ran the school, this being nuns, priests, and other such holy men, as a majority of them residential schools were Catholic. This suffering ran from physical, mental, and even sexual abuse. The goal of these church was to, quote, Christianize, civilize, and assimilate the native people. And this wasn't just in Canada. The United States had its own system of 367 residential schools from 1860 up until 1978. With this, it's clear to see that Christianity played a major role in the liquidization of Indigenous people and culture. More than 4 generations of Indigenous people were taken from their families and systematically robbed of their heritage and culture. Quote, from the earliest colonial days, violently clearing the land of Indigenous people, like slavery, was critical to the formation of our country. And as with slavery, Christianity played an instrumental role in advancing violence against Indigenous communities. 3 papal edicts, known together as the doctrine of discovery, provided a religious justification for colonial conquest and exploitation of non-Christian people, and paved the way for the West African slave trade, slavery, and indigenous genocide. End quote. When looking at the betterment of society, it's clear that it's only achieved when everyone's needs are met. When egalitarianism is valued and prioritized, religious beliefs and practices, while not inherently bad, lead to there being major backsteps in human rights and in turn societal progress as a whole. Even with the countless amount of people that say their life was made better by religion or that God saved their lives, the endless amounts of bloodshed can never be taken back or made up for. It is for this we must negate. We now stand. Oh, there's cross-ex now, right? Yeah.
And then we can do tag team cross-ex, so we're all allowed to ask and answer questions.
You want to start cross-ex time now?
Yeah.
Okay. Time starting now. All right. As Af, I believe we get first question.
Mhm.
All right. In your contention 1, you talked about how the Holocaust, kind of like the Nazis. One, can you state the author of that source, please, and the date?
I cannot state the author, but I can give you the, hold on 1 minute, it's loading. It is from United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Christianity and the Holocaust, a bibliography. I could send the link over the chat if you'd like.
Okay, but you can't state the author.
I mean, I can look it up, but it's from the United States
You have
Holocaust
the date
Memorial
as well.
Museum.
Does it say the date as well, Connor?
For the time's sake of
no, but the site does have a bunch of different things. Brown, Fleming, Suzanne, the Holocaust and the Catholic Conscience, Carol James, Constantine's Sword, the Church and the Jews, Connolly John from Enemy to Brother.
That's probably okay. If that's okay, awesome. I'll ask a question. So you talked about in your first contention, you mentioned AA meetings, and I don't know if I'm not correct, but what is that? Is that like specifically a religious practice that you're saying is beneficial towards health?
No, but it is linked to churches, as they use belief and spiritualism to encourage those with suffering from alcoholism to progress further in their not drinking. I forgot the word, but
Yeah,
drinking.
yeah, got it.
Okay, going back to your contention 1, was World War II in general caused, would you say that World War II in general was solely caused by religion?
Well, obviously not. Religion played a huge part. And that was just an example of the Catholic Church failing to speak out against the Nazis and in turn giving people a moral justification for those actions. That was just an example of the results of religious beliefs and practices and the churches that run underneath that.
And then is it okay if I ask another question, Connor, or did you want to? Okay.
No, go ahead.
So in your second contention, you said that religion increases education. And you talked about how increase in education will help decrease hate crimes against religious. So what kind of education would be increased? Are we talking about like academically, like more like kind of traditional education that you would see in school, or like education about religion itself?
So in our contention one, we talk about actually both. So we go into how increase on education in different cultures and beliefs and how they're related to religion and religion practices. It would educate people more on this and get them more accustomed and used to the differences in society between that, making it less likely for people to discriminate and decrease those. And then we also talked about students who are more active in religion and the practices that are involved with those succeed better in school and are more likely to graduate and contribute better to our society.
That is the end of cross time or cross-ex. So
did you guys want to take a breath?
Carter, call you.
Is that a yes on prep? Okay, cool.
We will take running time starting now.
You good?
Okay, I don't know what happened. My computer just kicked me out of the meeting, but it says recording in progress, so we should be good.
Okay.
All right.
My opponent's ready? Is my partner ready? And we'll begin now. Our opponents have mentioned several different pieces of evidence, such as the transcontinental deaths and how they claim it's linked to religion, and Catholic churches, and how some Catholic like figureheads had supported Nazism. I will be going over that in my speech. Beginning with the Catholic churches, our opponents have failed to provide evidence on how they justified their support of Nazism with religion. They, as Connor had mentioned, as my opponent has mentioned, he had only stated that the Catholic churches had actually supported Nazism, and had failed to actually state any evidence on how, such as that would mean like, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Moving on to my second point of the transcontinental trade. Again, they had failed to mention how the deaths of disease and the oppressors had been linked to religion. Yes, they had mentioned a book in the Bible. However, they had not mentioned how that was used to justify disease, and like they were not slaves yet. They were on their way to become slaves. As well as they had also mentioned how in the I'm so sorry, in the they were called in residential schools. They had mentioned that I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of children had died due to their oppressors, but they had failed to mention how they did and how it was justified by religion. That's about it.
All right. Connor, would you like me to take any prep? But if not, I'm fine. But if you want to speak before just for a second, we can. Connor. Hold on, sorry, I'm having internet issues. Sorry, Connor, did you hear what I said?
I did
No.
not know.
Oh, okay. Did you want me to take prep time so we could talk?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, all right. Then I'm going to.
Real quickly, do you need my times?
Oh, for like prep, for how much prep time?
That and how long the speech was?
I don't need to know how long your speech was. Miss Briggs will probably just keep track of that. But as long as you guys are just keeping track of your prep time and making sure you're not going over, it's fine. All right, I'm gonna start the time right now. All right, I just stopped the time at 1 minute and 21 seconds, so I will keep track of that. All right. We have 1:39 left, and then the speech is 4 minutes. So I will get my timer up right now. And if everyone is ready, I'm going to begin right now. So first, I'm going to be going over my defending our contentions and what our opponents said against our contentions, and then I'll be going over and attacking their contentions in more detail. So first off, our opponents stated about our first contention that we didn't give evidence of how Christianity supported the Nazis. However, that is completely false. We talked about how Christianity didn't speak out against the Nazis, and that in itself is symbolic and representative of their views, because it teaches their followers that what the Nazis did was okay, and encourages things like this to keep happening. We talked about different massacres and genocide that resulted because of religion, and that isn't a coincidence. That is a reflection of their values and the beliefs that they preach to their followers. Next, moving on to their attacks on our first subpoint about slavery. They talked about, again, are actually also going back to what they said. They said we didn't have evidence. However, our source was, although we didn't provide an author, the website in and of itself is credible, and so the evidence, we did have evidence, and don't let them tell you that we didn't, because we provided a lot of evidence for that. Next, they for our second contention, they talked about how we didn't prove how it was connected to Christianity. However, my partner has said in the first speech that these schools that the Native American children were assimilated in were ran by Christianity, and not only that, but they were forced to assimilate to the religion and assimilate their entire culture and conform to Christianity and the culture, and that was forced from Christianity and their practices themselves. So that is how it's connected to Christianity. So their attacks on that contention false. Another thing I wanted to mention is how it is very a lot of Christians used their religion as justification for slavery. Not only we provided the example from the Bible, however, a lot of them used the idea that slaves were less than human, and they used the idea that God and Christianity will save them, and they're allowed to be enslaved because of Christianity, and justifying it with that. And so if you have somebody who thinks it's maybe morally incorrect, they can use Christianity to justify that, and inspires them to go to enslave them and do all of these horrible things. Next, moving on to our final contention about the assimilation of Native Americans. I just mixed that up with the two contentions, but like I said, all the residentials, they were all Catholic residential schools, but since I made that mistake, I want to go back I made that mistake. I combined those two subpoints, but those are two different subpoints. Now I'm going to be moving on to attacks against their contention. Their first contention, or against their contentions. I'm going to start with their second contention about education. We have this piece of evidence talking about how religious belief creates conflicts with science and deters many religious students from pursuing scientific education. This is Ferguson 14. A decreasing number of students electing to pursue studies and careers in science has prompted a focus on developing ways to not only improve students' understanding of science, but to foster within students an appreciation of science. Ever since religion and science has coexisted, there has been the widespread perception that science and religion are opposites. No two things could possibly be more different than evolutionary biology and the origins of life according to Genesis. So this is just talking about how it discourages students from science. And we also have another piece of evidence talking about how censorship and how they censored textbooks. So is this education really important if it is misinformed? And is it beneficial for society if the education itself is misinformed? That's all the time I have. I now stand open for cross-ex.
Okay, as I believe we get the first question. Okay, so in contention one, you attacked our contention one, or our attack on your contention one, saying that since they didn't speak out, that directly means that they were in support of it. Can you just go further into explaining how them not speaking out?
All right, so the quote I provided from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum was stated at the end of it was many mainstream Protestant and Catholic Church leaders made numerous compromises with Nazi authorities and supported many of the Nazi measures throughout the period. And so, yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay.
Paige, do you have a question? Or if not, I do.
Okay, yeah. How about you ask your question?
All right. So this is just a general question concerning your case. So the resolution is whether or not religious beliefs and practices benefit society, right? And so do you agree that when you're looking at a society, you can't just look at the current society, you have to look at the history of it? Do you just agree with that general statement?
I agree that by looking at history, we can improve our path, or we can improve our future. So as history is important in the point of we can progress as a society by looking at our past and correcting our mistakes.
But that's not what we're supposed to be debating here. We're supposed to be debating whether or not society itself has benefited from religious beliefs and practices. So do you agree that history is important when evaluating this question?
As I stated before, I think history is important in general about just learning.
All right, cool.
All right, question. Throughout your case, you mainly talk about the Catholic religion. Do you have any evidence based on other religions, or do you mainly
in the beginning of when I was talking about this, I talked about how 54.5% of the world subscribes to Abrahamic religions, and it is Abrahamic religions that are the most widespread and have the most power. And so that's why most of the things that I said were concerning the Catholic Church, as that is one of the more influential religions and has caused some of the more influential stuff.
Okay, but this does talk about religion as a whole, correct?
Yes, it does talk about religion as a whole, but as the end piece of my entire speech, I talked about how no matter how much good comes from religion, and this includes this includes all religions, that doesn't take away from the lives lost in the name of religion, and that doesn't take away from the systematic oppression that is in place because of religion.
Also, just to add on to that, we would never be able to cover every single religion because there's so many. So we are just going to focus on what's the majority.
Okay, thank you. You guys have a question? Or are we out of time?
How much time do we have?
Because mine says we're out of time. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Then we're out of time. There's only 4 more minutes left on the meeting, so I'm gonna end this, stop the recording and end it, and then create a new one, and I'll send that link in the chat.
It may take me a minute because I have to do it on my computer.
Okay, all right.
Okay, cool.